Hi guys, welcome to C9.4, giving out energy as electricity. In this little bit of the module, I'm going to introduce you to simple fuel cells, how they work and how they are different to electrolysis cells, despite looking an awful lot like them. So what do you need to know? All of this is extending. So if you are taking the core exam, please just turn off this video. Nothing in this video will come up on your exam. However, if you're taking the extending exam, watch on. You need to be able to describe a simple cell and explain what drives the current. So you need to be able to talk about where the electrons are coming from, where they're going to, the flow of electrons, that kind of stuff. So describe simply how it works. You also need to be able to predict which metal will be at the negative pole. That you'll notice that we're using the term negative pole and positive pole rather than anode and cathode, but more about that later. You need to be able to give equations, so half equations for both sides of the simple cell, and then an overall equation. For that, we just apply our redox writing half equation rules that we already know about. You also have to describe the hydrogen fuel cell simply. There's a lot of stuff out there that has really, really detailed information about how a hydrogen fuel cell works. It's actually quite complicated. You will never have to draw a hydrogen fuel cell or explain in detail what's happening. So don't get too bogged down in how difficult this is. It's not difficult at all. You just need to know the basic reaction and memorize the half equations and the overall reaction. Okay? Right, first of all, I want you to pause this video and I want you to try and spot as many differences as you can between these two cells, because very often students will get confused between electrolysis cells and simple cells, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So pause the video and think about as many differences as you can. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video, you've got some ideas of your own. I'm going to talk you through some of the differences now. First up is probably the most important difference. If ever you're in an exam and you see what looks like an electrolysis cell, the first thing you have to do is you have to look, does it have a battery or does it have a voltmeter at the top? If it has a battery, it's electrolysis cell because it needs the battery to drive the reaction. If it has a voltmeter or something else, a bulb or something else that's not a battery, then it's talking about it's a picture of a simple fuel cell. And so the way that you answer the question is different. What I would say to you is see them as two entirely different things and learn them completely separately. That way you'll never get confused in the exam and write the wrong stuff. But that's the first thing you look for. Does it have a battery? Yes, it must be an electrolysis cell. Does it have a battery? No, it must be a simple fuel cell. So the next thing is the words that we use to describe the anode and cathode. In an electrolysis cell, we will always use anode and cathode we follow our don't panic. Positive is anode, negative is cathode. So you'll see that here we've got the words anode and cathode. That's fine, we understand that. We did that a few chapters ago. Over here, in a simple fuel cell, so if you see a voltmeter or a bulb or something, you use the word positive pole and negative pole. You never use anode and cathode because it's actually flipped, and that just makes it really confusing for students and for everybody. So we use negative pole, positive pole. The negative pole is what gives off the electrons, and the electrons flow around in this direction, as we'll see in a minute. So the negative pole gives out the electrons upwards through the cell, and the positive pole is the one where the electrons end up. So it's kind of opposite to anode and cathode. The next one is our electrodes. So in a fuel cell over here, the flow of the electrons is driven by the electrodes, whereas the flow of the electrons in electrolysis is driven by the flow of the ions in solution. So it's a little bit different. So you'll see here that the flow of the electrons comes from the negative pole through the voltmeter or the bulb or whatever it is you're using to harvest your electricity or measure your electricity, and down into the positive pole, which is entirely different to the electrolysis cell, which is flowing from the anode around to the cathode and then through the electrolyte. It's entirely different because what's generating your flow of electrons is entirely different. What's generating your flow of electrons over here is your battery. What's generating your flow of electrons over here is your negative pole.